Hi, everyone. Welcome to an interview with Fran Arsenault, one of the candidates for the upcoming election for the Board of Selectmen. I'm Ashley Dawn. I'm one of the student leaders of AB Students for Equity and Justice here in Acton, and I'm doing this interview on behalf of Racial Justice for Black Lives. Hi, Fran.
Hey, Ashley, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, great. Thanks for having me.
Of course. So, just to start off the interview, would you like to tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I've lived in Acton for 30 years. My husband and I have raised our two daughters here. Both of my daughters went through the AB school system. Um, and a little bit about my background is I went to public high school. I came up to Boston to attend school, Gibbs College for Business Administration, and then art school at the School of the Museum of Fine Arts. And then later, when my daughters were at Merriam, I went to school to get my real estate license. Oh, and I have two Jack Russell Terriers named Willa and Lucy, and we love walking the Acton trails.
The Acton trails are great. I love walking them with my family and dog too.
We go to Great Hill a lot. Yeah, one of my
Yeah,
favorite spots.
absolutely. So, what's one of your favorite parts about living in Acton? Would it be the walking trails?
I mean, so much. The walking trails. I love the history. I'm on the Historic District Commission, so I do love antique homes in town and Acton's rich historic value.
So, this sort of touches on something that you talked about where you grew up. So, did you grow up in a community where diversity and inclusion were prioritized? Did this have any impact on you? Kind of what was the narrative growing up surrounding issues of diversity and inclusion?
So I don't really remember it being a huge part of the conversation. I know that I grew up in a diverse high school, and this was the 1980s. So, we had Asian children, we had a few South Asian children, people of color as well. Black children who lived in one of the three towns that the high school was, made up. Then some children from New Haven who came to school as well. So, sort of probably like what Acton, Boxborough, like sort of the Metco program is.
So, is there anything from growing up in a diverse town that you kind of have carried with you now as you run for office and carry out all of the leadership you have in town?
So I think that just recognizing the diversity is a big step, and listening to residents, and having empathy is extremely important. And I think I have all of those things.
So, transitioning away from where you used to live, what are some of the ways that you're involved in Acton in our community nowadays? Just tell us about some of those things that you've been doing.
So, like I said, I've been serving on the Historic District Commission for 6 years. That has really made me enjoy volunteering for our community. It has given me a glimpse into town management and government, and the way the town operates. I also work closely with town departments such as the building department and the Board of Health with my job as a realtor. Um, so I think that that would be helpful, just as a baseline for being on the Board of Selectmen.
So, as we've said, you're running for the Board of Selectmen here in Acton. And so, did your participation in our community and all of these things that you've just mentioned influence this decision? What are the main reasons that you're running? Just kind of tell us a little bit about why you want to run.
So one of the main reasons was I'm very proud to be a member of the steering committee for racial justice for Black Lives. And working alongside other committee members has been so fulfilling and humbling as well. And around the time when George Floyd was murdered, and we were heading into a highly stressful election, it made me see that we have so much work to do on the local level regarding racism, and standing out alongside our community members at Kelly's Corner has really made me see how much work we have to do. I would like to balancing increasing affordable housing, especially for seniors, with preserving historical sites and conserving our open space. I would like to bring more businesses to Acton, working with the other Board of Selectmen, bringing more businesses to Acton to increase our commercial tax base and relieve some pressure, you know, caused by our residential property taxes. My biggest reason for running would be around just making Acton a more equitable place.
In terms of balancing, affordable housing and preserving the historics, would you say that your work, in terms of being a realtor and your work with the Historic Society has really helped you here or will help
Def-
you?
Definitely. I think that being on the Historic District Commission has given me a great base for working with other town departments as well as my job. Putting on my realtor hat, I've seen the need for different types of housing that we need for different residents who have the need for more affordable housing. And I think that that should be a huge priority. Acton has spent, we've spent a lot of time building 40B affordable housing that actually isn't really affordable to people making a certain amount of money, which is up to $40,000.
You talked about your experience standing on Kelly's Corner with Racial Justice for Black Lives. Could you expand a little bit on this, maybe on the impact it had on you?
Well, it was so surprising to me. The community as a whole was so welcoming and coming together. I think the first standout, there were literally 500 people. And that was amazing to see. But on the other hand, what I was shocked by was the adversity to my standing there holding a Black Lives Matter sign. That was eye opening.
In terms of diversity and inclusion and equity efforts, which you briefly mentioned, can you go into a little bit more detail about kind of the work that you've been doing in the town in terms of this DEI work?
Backing up and, you know, when the group was newly forming around George Floyd's murder and the heated election that we were going into, all of those at that level made me open my eyes to the local level, and standing out with the Racial Justice for Black Lives group on Kelly's Corner made me see that we have a lot of work to do here. I think that initially we had met with area police departments to figure out different types of things that they do, as far as how they handle um, diversity in the community. And I think that I would love to see, and one of the biggest things that would be a goal for me would be having a mental health team at the police department. So if um, that they can handle de-escalation calls for mental health crises or domestic disputes or substance abuse. I think that that would really be a key for our community.
And like you said, you work with Racial Justice for Black Lives. Do you want to just tell us a little bit more about your position within the group, or kind of give us any insight on how you're going to be going about working with Racial Justice for Black Lives as well as with the Board of Selectmen? What's the intersection here, and how can you use one to support the other?
So the intersection here, um, they're a great group of people. We have core group, and then we break out to different committees. And I think that working with this group and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Commission that the town has formed, it just gives us so many tools to apply it to the town. Um, we've been really, I've been grateful that we've been currently working internally as a group, working on helping us work better um, for the community, to help the community. And I would really love to apply that some way in a town-wide effort, such as a forum, or I think that would, I don't know what that would look like, but I think that that would be a great goal.
So the next question is, what perspectives and experiences will you bring to the Board of Selectmen that might not previously have been represented within the group? And how will those help you do your job and help the town?
So I think that a woman being on the board is needed. I think the perspective of listening skills and those things are important. I apply those things in everything I do. I'm a big communicator. I have great communication skills. I see that as a big part of that job. The Board of Selectmen's responsibilities are just really working with the other committees in the town and with your constituents.
We've briefly touched on it, but in terms of your experiences working with on the steering committee for racial justice for Black lives, does this give you any experience that you're going to try and implement in terms of like leading or communicating with people? Is there any experiences from racial justice for Black lives that you'll be carrying over?
I hope so, and I'm still learning myself. But I would really like to see some sort of town-wide education. I think that uh, the incidents that have been happening, I mean, we recently just had an incident happen this past weekend, or which is really distressing. I think that we need to come together as a town and figure out a way to move forward. I think education is a big part of that.
You took the next question right out of my mouth that I
Oh, that's
had
cool. I'm
prepared.
glad.
I was going to say the next thing that I wanted to ask about, because this is something that AbSeg also has a lot of interest in, is that we've seen a lot, an unfortunate and a drastic increase in the number of hate crimes, racially motivated incidents and attacks in our district. So how do you think this issue needs to be addressed? I know you kind of went over that, but maybe a little bit more depth on what you think needs to happen next.
I just think that I think that the town governing body has to listen. I think that um, the town has been divided uh, with different issues, and I think it's now a time to just start listening. And again, I think that educating the town in some sort of forum would be key. I mean, I don't necessarily think that it's the responsibility for certain residents to educate our children. I think we need to have people, we need to hire people to do that.
Yeah, I'd absolutely agree with that. We talked briefly about, hate crimes and racial incidences that have been happening in Acton. I know some people might not know what this is exactly about. So would you like to talk about that a little bit more?
Most recently, two of our school committee members experienced horrible racial epithets while doing their duty as elected officials in our town. Um, and not only did it happen once, it happened twice. I think that um, the way that it was handled from our town government was um, not proactive. I think it was reactive, and I think they need to be. I think these racial incidents that are happening need to be taken seriously, and uh, our members who these are our community members that this is happening to, they have to have a seat at the table.
In
Hmm.
terms of offering space for healing, or creating opportunities for people to heal from all of these incidents,
Hmm.
do you think that comes from education? How can we best support people who are being hurt by these incidents?
So I think education is important. I know that, Racial Justice for Black Lives, we offer a healing space. I think it happens on Monday nights. Anyone can just join and, talk to, there are a couple of social workers, therapists, and it's a great group. I think that's helpful. I think it's just not a one answer solution. I think it's many things. Education, most importantly.
Yeah, I'd agree it's many things. I think that
Mhm.
the most important thing is a town commitment to
Mhm.
moving forward and making things better.
Mhm.
So, yeah.
You got it,
Um,
Ashley.
yeah. That's why I'm so glad that we're having this discussion. I think it's absolutely the
I
most important
have
thing
to
that we can
say,
talk.
when Racial Justice for Black Lives was first forming in June, and I was reading Absedge's mission and goals, though that was impactful. That was impactful to
That's so
me.
great to hear. I makes me so happy. Yeah. And again, as a member of ABSEDGE, I'm so glad to be able to work with Racial Justice for Black Lives, work with you, and work with town leadership to make sure that we're prioritizing these important issues. All right. The next question that I wanted to ask is, this kind of goes along with the idea of your perspectives and your experiences, but what do you think is currently lacking in our town leadership? And do you have any plans to fix this if you were to be elected? Or what do you think needs to happen in order to remedy these shortcomings in town leadership?
I think that I think in town leadership, it I we have to have. I keep going back to listening skills, and uh, which is important. That's number one. I think working collaboratively with other with your own committee members is really important. Um, and other committees in town. Um, I think that we want residents of Acton to be happy. I mean, we chose Acton because it was welcoming and warm, and I want all of our residents to feel that way now.
And are there any specific, steps or things that you think could happen in order to make that true on the behalf of town leadership? How do leaders within our town make sure that Acton is welcoming for everyone?
So I think that listening to other town leaders and working with them collaboratively is really important, and not so much overreaching, but listening.
I think that listening is probably a great skill to have in leadership. So I'm very happy to have you say that. I think the next thing that I'd want to know is, in terms of, we've talked about, your experience working with the Racial Justice for Black Lives, your experience working with other places, how these have shaped your perspective. Having all of these together, what are your main priorities of things that you want to change and act in? Like, just what's first on your list if you were to become a member of the Board of Selectmen?
So I think I touched upon earlier that making Acton a welcoming place is key to me. Um, Again, balancing our open space and making housing for affordable. Um, Also, I've been hearing out on the campaign trail, and these are like little things that I've been hearing. Just um, maybe making the town website more user friendly. So many folks are like, I can't figure out how to vote or print out my ballot. Just simple things like that, I think, can be addressed.
In terms of these small things that you're hearing, on the campaign trail, do you
Yeah.
have any way that you'd hope to continue getting this feedback, and really figuring out those little small things that make the whole difference, a lot of difference for all these Acton residents? What do you
I,
think would be the best way to continue that communication?
I think just being out there and talking to your community members, and I I do that a lot anyway. I'm out there. Although COVID, we haven't really been out there as much as we want to, as I want to be. But I really am out in the community.
For a lot of people who've worked in activism, sort of the backlash that comes from suburban towns is not really something that I expected. So I definitely understand you get taken aback a little bit when you see that little bit of resistance.
It's distressing.
Yeah, absolutely. In terms of seeing this sort of reaction to the work that you were doing, how did this change the way that you viewed our town, or change the way that you thought about maybe what you might want to work on moving forward? Did that impact any of your ways of thinking?
I think that it made me realize how much work we do have to do here. And also, not only listening, but involving community members in the story and amplifying voices like ABSEDGE and your group that you represent. And it's so your mission and goals are so impactful and powerful.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Um, in terms of this amplification of other groups' voices, or of the voices of people of color, is this a goal that you hope to hold if you were to be elected?
Definitely. I would uh, keep working with racial justice for Black lives and bring the work that I do with that group and other racial justice groups to my position of the Board of Selectmen. I think that the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusivity Commission, they're working on some sort of recording process in the town for recording these types of incidents when they happen, whether it's some sort of registrar. And I know that our town manager, John Mangiarotti, has set aside some money in the budget to even hire someone at the town, a diversity officer. So that is positive.
For me, and I know so many other people that I work with through ABSEDGE, AB Students for Equity and Justice, it's really alarming, the volume of attacks that we're seeing. For example, like just this past weekend, we had another incident. I don't know if you'd like to touch on that a little bit more.
I mean, another incident of a swastika painted on a bathroom wall. I mean, I think education is so important, and it's not necessarily the job of community members to educate our children. We need to have some sort of education townwide. I think, the our town employees have to go through diversity training. I think we need to consider some sort of community forum that educates community members.
I think that's an excellent idea because, with how much we're seeing it, to me at least, and I'm sure to you, it's becoming clear that this is just indicative of so many other things that are just culminating in these hate crimes. Oh.
Right.
What perspectives and experiences will you bring to the Board of Selectmen if elected? How will they help the town, and how will they help you as you carry out your work for the town?
So I think it's important to have more, women in town governance in leadership roles. I think that that is a big deal.
I absolutely agree. Going into this interview, as I was preparing, I was thinking, do I have to sit here and say board of select men every time I address this position? It feels exclusionary. So that was one of the reasons I was so happy to do this interview and to talk to you. Do you have any thoughts on this board of selectmen? Just in general, how exclusionary that really sounds.
So exactly, Ashley. And on the ballot on March 30th is the vote to change Board of Selectmen to the Select Board. So that I hope it passes. It passed by, 2/3 vote at town meeting. So now we all have to have our residents finish the job.
I'm happy to hopefully see that happen. Experiences uh, with racial justice for Black lives, and perspectives that you've gained from that. Uh, does that play into at all how you want to approach leadership or would want to approach leadership?
Definitely. And I think that including voices of community members and amplifying those voices are important. And I think that having those voices be part of the decision making is important part of the process.
Do you have anything else to add that we didn't cover or that you want to spend some more time talking about that we didn't get to in the first part of the interview?
So I just wanted to kind of recap what we talked about. And I just think that what you're doing with ABSETCH is so key and impactful again. Um, I'm thankful for that group. Um, and I think as far as what I've demonstrated, I've had lots of involvement in our community. I've attended a lot of Board of Selectmen meetings, serving on the Historic District Commission, and volunteering locally. I think I bring that experience. My passion for working against racism just shows my readiness to work with the diversity of our evolving population here in Acton. I'm committed to serving our town and excited to take it to the next level. And I humbly ask for your vote for the Board of Selectmen, soon to be select boards.
18 yet, so unfortunately I won't be voting in this election. But for anyone who does want to vote, what are the steps they should go through?
So, Ashley, it's a two-step process. So, you'd go to the town website and apply for a ballot. Once they receive your application, the town clerk will mail a ballot, and that will have to be mailed back or dropped in the voter boxes at town hall, and they have to be received by 8 p.m. March 30th. Or you can vote in person at RJ Gray on March 30th.
So thank you everyone for watching and listening. And thank you, Fran, so much for being able to do this interview. It's been great to learn a little bit more about who you are and what you're planning to do going forward.
Thanks so much, Ashley. It was a pleasure meeting you. And you could learn more about me by going to www.franarsenault.com. From there, too, I have a social media page. You could go to my website, and the Facebook feed is also on there. But thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that extra information. Thanks again.